Okay, you're very welcome back to the Rossie podcast. I'm joined again this week by Roscommon and St. Folia's player Diarmuid Murtagh. Diarmuid, I had yourself and Connor on last week. I wasn't expecting to be chatting to, well, one of you anyways, at least this week, after a drawn county final at the weekend there. So just your own reflections on that. You know, a very good game of football, has to be said.
Yeah, Connor actually predicted the draw last week, so I predicted the Brigid's win. So I'd say a lot of Pearses people who are listening are happy enough with Connor's prediction over mine. Yeah, look, it was a great game of football, and I wasn't at the game myself, but I played in the Hyde when the weather is like that, and it's very very difficult when you're playing into that wind, but also it's very difficult to play with it. Like it's very hard for players to stand out when the conditions are like that, because and a lot of the time the games can pass you by. With the wind being so strong, with the kickouts going long, the kickouts going a bit shorter when you're against it. So I have to give both teams credit. Like I thought they gave a great county final for the neutral. And look, it's great for all of us that we get to watch them do it all over again.
Yeah, and like I said, the wind was extremely strong, and like you'll know from playing in the high. Does it actually now? I'm from recollection. Does it always blow down nearly straight into the graveyard end?
Yeah, it's kind of funny enough. I find it's nearly always going down into that graveyard end, kind of in early parts of the league, and sometimes it changes to the other end in the championship come summertime. But yeah, it kind of goes into that graveyard end, into that left hand corner on the terrace side. So it's a very strong wind with you, but it's not a gimme when you're taking a shot. So yeah, it is strong. Like it's you could see from the shots, like some of the lads were only tipping the ball and the distance it was traveling. And it's a funny one. I'd be really interested to see who won the toss, because did Pearses decide to go against it and contain Brigid's, or the Brigid's decide to go with it and try and build up a substantial lead at half time and see it out then. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'd love for the two teams to go toe to toe on a normal calm day, and may the best man win.
Yeah, and it did seem dark arts or cuteness from Pearses that, you know, maybe a couple of fellas going down. And fairness to Bridges as well, they started very well, and they were 8-1 up after about, I think, 13 or 14 minutes, and you're thinking like they could be completely out of sight, wind or no wind here. But I
Yeah.
suppose your experience, maybe Roland Daly, I think at a stage actually went down for a minute or so with no treatment. It's that kind of cuteness though that you need to,
Oh,
play against the elements with that.
absolutely, 100%. I was watching the game. I wasn't at it now, but I was watching on Clubber, and oh, he was dead right. Absolutely, I got a good laugh listening to Olsen and Connor Huzzy and the commentary. They knew exactly what was going on. But oh no, yeah, I thought Pierce's at half time would have been absolutely over the moon, happier than people think. I thought they managed the first half absolutely brilliant. Now I have to say, as I didn't think like many players had unbelievable games, but I thought a lot of big players had a lot of clutch moments. And one of them for me was actually when Brigid's were about 8-1 up. Conor Ryan hit an unbelievable free. And just even psychologically for Pearses, looking into that scoreboard, it's 8-3 instead of 8-1. And next thing you're winning the next kick out and you have possession, you get a bit more energy from that. So I thought that was a huge, huge moment in the game. And I thought he actually got them out of trouble over at the dugout side with a few kickouts as well. So yeah, as you're coming back to it, there was a lot of big moments and big players, and yeah, like Pearses, they were very cute in the first half, and I can imagine in the huddle for the game when the toss was made, that was something that they would have planned to do, and they had every right to do it, and they'll do the same this Saturday again. And there's not really a lot you can do about it. Like, all you can do with the Bridges player is show the referee your watch, but if there's like if the clock like keeps ticking, I know there's no buzzer in club football,
Mm.
and then I go back to that psychological thing, like on the clock, like the ref will never play the right amount of injury time for the stoppages, in my opinion. I feel like once the clock ticks towards 29 minutes, you're going to get 4 minutes added on max, and there could be about 8 minutes there of lads going down with head injury. So yeah, fair play to Pearses, like they played it very well like that. And as I said, it'll be interesting again this weekend. Will the toss when it's made? Will Bridges try and do that now in the first half? Will they try and maybe win the toss and kill the game a small bit early on and then go for it in the second half. Because as you can see, like not a lot of people predicted it, but they have a lot of 2-point kickers as well as Pearses.
Yeah, and as a player, and I think we kind of discussed it earlier in the year with a couple of the lads. With the 2-pointer now, is it better to have the wind in the second half? I mean, the old way would have been to build up a lead in the first half with the wind, go with it. But it seems like more teams are opting to actually play against the wind in the first half. As we said, we don't know how the toss did go actually, but some teams are opting to play, winning the toss and opting to play against it.
Yeah, it's very difficult for these two teams because both of them fancy themselves to be the better team. So I would think that maybe both teams might go with it and try and build up an advantage. I know I might contradict a small bit what I'm after saying, but I think both these teams in any of the games they would have played so far this year, they probably, if they won the toss, would go with the win and try and build up that substantial lead and maybe close out the game early and like any belief an underdog has, take that away from them. So I don't. It's very difficult for the both of these. Like I think both of them would like the win and get a substantial lead, and then fancy closing the game out. For example, say now when Pearses maybe played us, they were probably very happy to go with the win in the first half and get that lead where we couldn't come back into the game, and they were able to manage the game. So. Yeah, it'd be very interesting to like. It's definitely going to be something that's going to be a big talking point for both teams and both restaurants this weekend. If they win the toss, what happens? But both teams played well with it and against it. I thought both teams were just really good on the day with no absolute unbelievable performances. But yeah, no, that talk about the win will be a conversation that the captains will be having with their management teams and leaders in the team this week.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, like 14, 15 minutes gone, it's 8-1 roughly. Then I suppose the 15 minutes after that and plus injury time, actually Pearses end up winning that period 5-4. It ended up 12-6 at half time. So I think Frank Canning actually said after the game that they were relatively pleased. Like for the position they were in after 14 minutes and it felt like Bridges could get it completely away here. To go in then at 6 down at half time and then to come out in the second half and get it back to one. It was very well managed. I think they'll be very happy with that kind of last 15 and first 10 of the second half.
Yeah, oh, they will be absolutely delighted. As I said, if it's the same this weekend, they'll take that all day long again, and vice versa. If Bridges are against that wind, if it's the same this weekend in the Hyde, they'll be very happy only to be 5 or 6 down at half time. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Like it does play a big part in it. And I think Bridget's like even coming towards half time, they would have been disappointed that they didn't have a lead. Now it was looking great for them because it was looking like get rate one up here, and then they have to go. They're like say pushing on the kickouts. They're getting a lot of the breaks. It looked like they could kick on, and next thing get up to 14, 15, 1 or 2, and then it's kind of game over. I think at a stage like that. So yeah, you have to give credit to Pearses, like they clawed their way back into the game. They killed the clock. They took their time with the frees. They got some really good scores as well, and some kind of half goal chances in the first half too. But they were probably made the smart options, took the smart options to keep the scoreboard ticking.
Yeah, just looking at a couple of the matches like we mentioned last week, Mark Richardson did go on Ben O'Carroll. In fairness, did relatively well on Ben.
Yeah, and like, look, as I said, a lot of players probably cancel each other out, but it's very difficult in the conditions, in them conditions, for a player to have a standout performance. Like, I think people that maybe don't play at that level mightn't understand how difficult it is because it's so windy. Say for the likes of Ben there, when he's playing inside with the wind, his team are reluctant to kick it in because to have that wind, they're probably better off instead of kicking it in and him getting a 1 pointer, maybe having to risk and go for a 2 pointer where sometimes a player can and he did do quite well in the second half as well, winning ball out in front. And you saw Senecal Bride coming on. It's you get actually more of a chance to play the ball through the feet against the wind than with the wind because if you're hitting in balls down someone's throat and it's small bit wet, it's very difficult to control and it could slide out over the end line. The next thing that's another minute, a keeper taking a kick out. But yeah, like the matchups were like as we kind of predicted, and also like nobody got anything easy. Everyone had to fight for what they got. And as I said, it wasn't a game where there was any individual um absolutely controlling the game, but there was really like big moments from a lot of players, I would say, and I could go through 6 or 7 of them there, and I'm sure them players will want the same and a bit more this weekend.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, the one player from a Bridges point of view, I thought Conor Carroll was actually very good
Yeah,
on his kick out for excellent. But like you're looking at, I suppose, Brian Stack in the second half,
yeah.
will say, like he was the real one that probably dragged like he got the equalising point, was actually an excellent ball in from Shane Canan, but he caught a kick out. He just felt like he was the driving force, which is
Mm.
expected. We know what Brian Stack does, but he really did step up, especially in the second half.
He did, and another player actually I forgot to mention was Rory Fallon. I thought he had a really, really solid game throughout. You could tell from the get go he was competing for kickouts. He got a 2 pointer. He was the one that was tracking back when someone was running through the middle, and just a real leader for them. And he actually won crucial. And I talk about clutch moments. Is he won crucial kickouts towards the end of the games out near the
Yeah.
sideline. The ones we'd associate with David Murray getting, and they're crucial. Like the leadership qualities to do that when you know you're under the cosh, if the keeper kicks to you and it goes out over the sideline, it's game over, or if you miscontrol it. So I thought that was fantastic leadership from him, and I wouldn't expect any less from him as well. And then I thought Connor Carroll and Brian Stack, especially in the first half, they must have had some conversations for the game about where the kickouts were going to go, because just I suppose from a player's tactical insight is when teams are setting up to defend kickouts, what Pearses were doing, they were pushing, which was very impressive. I was delighted to see that they were going for it in the first half. They weren't just dropping off the kickouts, but like a lot of teams do um, a bank of three players, or four, or the might go 4-3-4. And Connor was able to get the kickouts up and down between the three and the four, which is a very impressive thing to do with the wind, to get it up and down. And Stacky was either catching it or breaking it. So, because see, they would have probably anticipated that the Pearses lads would all go back into their own 45 that wind and fight for the breaks and break it. But then Bridges went for the mid range kick out. So I thought that was an interesting tactical duel. And then like when they start winning a few of those, Pearses have to tighten up in that, and then Connor started to go really long with them. So, it was interesting. Like, you'd love to be in both dressing rooms this week, just being a fly in the wall to see what they're planning to do this weekend to maybe overcome some of the things that they noticed on the pitch.
Yeah, and looking at the Pearses team there, and like I suppose Sean Trundle followed Paul Carey around the place, and probably I did it. Look, again, a good job, because Paul Carey was limited to pretty much not a whole pile.
Yeah, no, and then Paul probably disappointed that he didn't kick that free at the end. He's usually very reliable with the frees. From Pierce's perspective, they probably feel like it shouldn't have came down to that. But yeah, again, like it's again playing in those conditions, it can be very tricky. I actually think the advantage is with the player who is out to mark a man, because it's windy, it's wet, there mightn't be as much risk taken, so it can look like they're having a quiet game. So yeah, it's a difficult one to know. I can feel sorry from I can see it from a forward's perspective why it's difficult to get into the game, because if you're not scoring 2 pointers with the wind, it looks like you're out of the game. And then if you're not on the ball much against the wind, it looks like you're not doing that well. But look, like as I said last week about the Bridges and the Pearses, kind of unsung heroes. Like they probably don't get enough credit. Like they're really good defenders. They could match up with anyone. So I'm not surprised that a lot of matchups were really tight and difficult. And yeah, it'll be more the same again. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see if any of them matchups change or not. Probably not, because I think both teams will be reasonably happy with the weekend.
Yeah, and from a Pierce's perspective, like they're 6 down at half time, they get it back to a point within maybe 5 or 6 minutes. Then it's a bit of a lull. Then Robbie Dolan gets a goal. I think Ronan Daly kicks an incredible score for a 2 pointer late on to put them a point up. There's still a lot of time left at that stage, and only get one more point. I think that's where they'll be probably bitterly disappointed that they didn't, kick on and win that game, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Ronan kicked a fantastic point, and he showed great leadership throughout the game, and he's well capable of doing more of that as well. But yeah, no, they'll be disappointed. They'll be disappointed. Like you thought, once Declan Kenny broke up the field and he had Stacky chasing him, and Stacky did really well to turn him, and he popped it over his shoulder for a score. You thought that was kind of the nail in the coffin. And I think actually Pierce's may have got the next ball, or I could be wrong. And remember, David Murray probably should have fisted over the bar and he gave it to Hubert. But in fairness to Hubert, if he scored the goal, I could see Ronan Daly screaming at the two of them. But if Hubert scored the goal, it was lights out. So I could see why they went for it. You'd have to appreciate that ruthlessness. But yeah, they'd be kicking themselves. They'd be kicking themselves. I actually want to mention as well about Ben O'Carroll's free in the corner. I don't think people will understand how difficult that was because, as I was saying, the wind was probably going down into that left hand corner. So now, although it's to a left footer to curl it, but to get the distance will be extremely difficult because the wind is coming into his face. Anyone who's used to playing in the hide would know that. So I thought that was an excellent free for him to kick and to keep Bridges in the game, because if he misses that, there's still a point up, and then a long kick out's coming and it's near injury time. So fair play to him for kicking that score.
Yeah, because literally in the first half, Hubert Darcy had, I think, a free in the exact
Oh yeah.
same position, and he actually decided to go back. So when I seen Ben in the same position, you're right, rightfully said, that was a massive kick, because like you could see by the flags that the wind was so strong that even a 21-yard free either side, maybe 5 or 10 yards of the post, it was no gimme.
Oh, exactly. And even Paul Carey kicked one there just on half time, and people were probably looking at that as a tap over free, but it was anything from it. It was a very good kick, and it's only, I suppose, the free taker that would appreciate that. But yeah, probably the one with Hubert, I'd say, was more of a game management decision than anything. He's a very smart player, uh, really good football brain. So what he was probably thinking there, it's probably a risk to take a shot, and you're not guaranteed to score it, or else we could keep the ball and kill. So if he takes that shot, the keeper could have the ball out within a minute of him taking that shot, or 30 seconds. Whereas if he keeps that ball and to get a shot or another free, it just takes that small bit of time off the clock. So it was probably good game management from their behalf, because they did go into the halftime. Can't recall what actually happened from that play when he went short, but I'm sure Pearses kept the ball for a little longer and just took that bit of the sting out of it, because Brigid's it's very difficult when you're playing with the wind like that and the other team have the ball, because Pearses are very strong runners. And I said last week on the podcast, they have a lot of pace. So if you push out too far and then you're leaving yourself one on one and they can sidestep you and go. So it's energy sapping for Bridges there to know whether to hold the arc or push out and try and win the ball back. Because if you push out and you're exposed, there's a chance that that man could beat you, and next thing you could concede a goal or a few easy tap over scores, with that wind. And it's kind of, I suppose, energy sapping them, because you have to use the wind. You should be ahead with the wind, and if you get what I'm saying there, if you're conceding easy scores and another team is playing into that strong wind, it can be a bit disheartening. So it's a fine balancing pushing out too far, but not letting them control the play around the middle of the field as well.
Yeah, and although it ended up 1-15 apiece, I'd say probably the defenders went home maybe a bit happier with the work. Like we'll just say maybe Owen Colleran didn't really probably have his best day out. Paul Carey we mentioned, like Kieran Sugru, Bobby Nugent, Connor Hand. There's a lot of forwards there that'll probably be sitting there this week. Not that anyone played poorly, but they'll be saying we can probably up us, and it's a good motivation to have going into the replay then.
Oh, absolutely. For me, what's going to swing it this weekend is someone who's going to come out of the crowd and have one of those games. Say someone like a Connor Hand there, or an Owen Colleran, who are capable of kicking a lot of scores. I feel like it's going to, or Ben O'Carroll, any of those lads, Declan Kenny, on either team. I think this weekend it's going to come down to one of those type of players who separate themselves from the rest. They'll be annoyed this week with themselves. They'll be frustrated. They would have wanted to have had a bigger impact. That goes for a lot of lads, but especially from a forward's point of view, when you want to be hitting the scoreboard. So I feel like it'll be one of those that'll break away from the rest of the group and maybe score 1-4, 1-5, or 6 or 7 points, and that may be the difference then this weekend.
Did anyone else stand out from watching the game?
Just thinking off the top of my head, probably, as I said, I don't think anyone really had that game where they would have been like really delighted with themselves. I thought maybe the defenders probably had the bigger plays. But as I said, it's very difficult because when the wind's like that, the game can easily bypass you. I hope the wind isn't as strong this weekend. I do think some of those players that I mentioned, especially some of the forwards. I think they'll be looking to, as I said, separate themselves in the crowd this week, take the game by the scruff of the neck a bit more. And I think that will be the difference. Now, who does that? I don't know, but I'm sure from a personal point of view, if I was, say, a forward from Pearses or Brigid during this week, I'd be really trying to get myself right for this weekend, and knowing that it's going to be a tight game again. Someone will have to do something. Will someone like Paul McGrath, who maybe didn't have his best games, like will someone like him stand up this weekend? Will Declan Kenny get back the form? Maybe he's had the whole championship and last year as well. Like who knows? You just don't know. Will Paul Carey shoot the lights out along Colin?
Mm.
Will Ben O'Carroll score 2-2? You never know. But I think a lot of them lads quietly will know deep down that it's going to come down to one of those. Maybe just having that game, maybe that man of the match performance. Whereas I felt like the kind of mid late and both teams were kind of the more prominent. But I do put that down to the weather conditions, definitely.
Yeah, and what's the 6 day turnaround like from a say a Sunday to a Saturday? Like I'm sure training wise, do they go Tuesday, Thursday? Is it just the one session on the Wednesday? It's probably not ideal to only have, I suppose, 6 days.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I'd say both teams just went Wednesday or going Wednesday. I'd say maybe a bit of recovery yesterday evening, and maybe a bit of video analysis, and depends on what their usual routine is. Like say they might train Wednesday and maybe have a final run through with tactics on Friday. Maybe not tug out on Friday, but I'd say the only time they'll be on the actual pitch will be Wednesday this week. I think it's mad about replay. I'd always have a preference for extra time and just get it done and dusted on the day. Now look, both teams might look at it differently. Like Bridges might think, no, we got out there, draw, we'll go again this weekend and have 60 minutes again. Whereas I think Pearses, even though they're probably disappointed they didn't win it, it could have been hard for them to get up for extra time, but they probably would have liked to have gone at it again, I'd say, the other day. But look, it's more so from the outset looking in, like, they all have plans for maybe having a few drinks after the game and stuff like that. And the clubs might even have celebrations for them, whether that's a winner or losing team that have stuff organized for them. And I always like a result on the day. Like you'd nearly prefer if it went to extra time and even penalties and just have the result on the day. Because it does it probably eats into their Connacht campaign as well. I know
Right.
they're not out for a Connacht semi-final, but it's another tough game on the road for both teams. But I'd be all for a finisher on the day. But look, both teams they won't be too worried about that. They'll see themselves as nothing's lost and we've a chance to win a county title. So they'll be gunning for each other this week again.
And can you overthink replays as well? Like, can you nearly look too much into the last day then, in terms of analysis and this and that? And it's almost like it becomes nearly too much of your preparation. It's kind of hard to get the balance, although you'd be looking at things you want to obviously improve on and maybe certain things, but you nearly, now maybe in my head, you wouldn't want to nearly overdo it at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like, and I don't think the analysis change much because I actually don't think either team got an awful lot wrong. Like I don't think either team will be thinking, "Oh, we should have put him on him," or "We should have done this or that." Like unless like maybe there's personnel changes or positional changes. That's all I could think of. Like, will Pearses take the risk and play Niall Daly, although he's a brilliant man to be bringing on? Is Pierce Frost fit for for him to start this weekend? That's the only really thing I can see kind of happening is maybe personnel changes, but tactically, I think they both kind of got a spot on. As I said, I just think it's going to come down to that player or two who will separate themselves from the rest and take the game by the scruff of the neck and just stand out a small bit more. I think that could be. And I looked like it was going to be someone like Rory Fallon last day with the way he started kicking the 2-pointer and catching kickouts. So he'll be looking for another big performance again, as will a lot of the Pearses lads too.
Well, look, if you have to call it, I'm pretty sure it has to be decided this weekend, anyways. Now, you can go with the Connor Hussey prediction and go for extra time and a draw, but how do you see it shaping up?
I might go with the team that plays against the win in the first half. Maybe that could be the way to predict it. No, I went with Bridges last week. and I think I'll go with them again. I think they have a bit more scope for improvement still. No, it's going to be so tight again. It's going to be so tight again. And I think it will. It's very 50-50. I think it'll come down to that player who takes the game by the scruff of the neck. I know I sound like a broken record with that, but if I had a gun to my head, I'd go with Bridges maybe just about this week again. So I'll accept any criticism from any Pearses person if Pearses win it this weekend again, because they must be saying, why is he predicting them after how good they were last week? But yeah, no, I'd be honest, two of the teams, the two of the teams deserve to win. They've earned it. And I tell you one thing, they're going to be two teams that are going to be very difficult to beat in a kind of championship campaign. I think both teams are a good bit ahead of the Mayo and Galway champions and Sligo and Leitrim champions and London as well. So, but look, who knows at this time of the year with weather, you never know what could happen. But I think the two club teams are very impressive, in fairness to them.
Yeah, well, it was an excellent final. I don't think anyone could be too critical with predictions on this game, given what we saw at the weekend. It should be another very close game and hopefully another very entertaining game as well. Look, Diarmuid, very much for coming on, and this podcast will be available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.